Welcome everyone, ourselves and all of those who may join us throughout the talk tonight, all of those who later on may be in contact with this subject, as we are continue our program, Jesus' Loving Invitation. And today we are coming to the final day of this program, and we have the pleasure to have with us today Vanessa Anseloni, our friend from the United States, from Virginia. It's a great pleasure once more to have you amongst us. For those who don't know who Vanessa is, we briefly go through with the introduction. Vanessa Anseloni lives in Virginia, United States, founder of the Spiritist Society of Baltimore, founder and president of the Spiritist Society of Virginia, and Spiritist Group of Washington. Radio Kardec is Spiritist medium. She is a neuroscientist and psychologist, founder of the School of Emotion. So we welcome you once more. And before we start our talk tonight and we hand it over to you, we would invite you and everyone who is already with us here, Fran, who is already with us, and others, for us to start with our harmonization. For those who wish to close your eyes, please do so. As we start to look within, choose to calm ourselves, relaxing our minds, our hearts, observing ourselves as beings essentially of goodness, of love and peace, that we bring in essence within. Immortal beings as we all are, children of God, created by God with love, in order for us to learn to love ourselves, to learn to love others, the universe. And in that way we start our reflections today, our meeting, expressing our gratitude for the creator of the universe, the loving Father of everyone. Our gratitude for our Master Jesus, our loving friend, our guide, the governor of earth. Our gratitude for the enlightened spirits, our brothers and sisters who are with us, the benefactors who are always anticipating us, preparing this ambient for all of us, incarnates and all of those in the spirit who are with us, joining this moment of learning, as learners as we all are, and with our hearts full of joy and gratitude, we start our meeting today. So be it. So may everyone feel welcome, and once more, Vanessa, the Spiritist Psychological Society welcomes you today when you will be presenting the theme, Jesus, the Motivator of Love. And in that way, we hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Evanise. Thank you, friends at the Spiritist Psychological Society. And congratulations for a year long of services, reaching out to each one of us, sharing the good news. Talking about good news today, you and I have an encounter with Jesus, the motivator of love, the encourager. When we study about motivation, we go to the most recent findings by the National Scientific Council on Developing Child, a collaborative research at Harvard University that just released new understanding. The researchers identified that there are two types of motivation: approach motivation and avoidance motivation. Approach motivation is the one in which we drive ourselves towards a reward. Avoidance motivation, obviously, is a way to avoid damage. In these two systems, they observe that it's important to build healthy motivation. How do we do it? They discovered that it's important to push our curiosity, our sense of exploration, avoiding extrinsic motivation. Like, for example, nowadays there is this huge spike in parents and educators to reward children with money, with toys, thinking, and even candy, chocolate, thinking that they are going to easily gravitate to the doing of their chores, of their homeworks, of their activities. But they learned that the systems that focused only on external rewards and punishments are unlikely to be sustainable. So it's important to boost the intrinsic motivation and reminding all of us that success is possible once we have a growth mindset, prioritizing social interactions and reminding every educator and parent on the importance of boosting intrinsic motivation. Where is Jesus in all this? He's the master, the educator, the number one encourager of us all. He didn't promise to any of us anything simple and easy. He actually encouraged us to the inner. Just to give us an example, let's go to the day in which he taught us the Sermon of the Mount. That day. What happened on that day? What is the context for those blessings, the Beatitudes, which is a discourse on motivation? It's a speech that boosts in us this intrinsic motivation and always boosting in us the ultimate one. It's an approach motivation, this immortal reward. In the book Good News, Boa Nova in Portuguese, in its original. In English, it's titled Good News. The book is already translated in the hand of the publisher. Meanwhile, the Spiritist magazine has already published every single chapter in the last 9 years. If you go to the Spiritist magazine in its 56 issues, you're going to find one chapter of this book published since 2012. This one is chapter 11, the Sermon of the Mount. And it's so interesting because it shows to us the context. As the author, Brother X, or Humberto de Campos, the writer through the hands of Chico Xavier says, and I have the book right here in my hand, it says to us that the good news were spreading out throughout the many cities around the lake. And the disciples were constantly being asked to help people who were sick, people who were sad, people who were in need of something. There was a day in which a small group of unfortunates sought after Levi. Levi and Matthew are the same people. If you read the Gospel, the New Testament, Levi and Matthew are the same. Matthew is the Greek name. Levi is the Hebrew one. So Levi was in his residence when a group of people who needed help came along and asked for his help. Levi approached them in a very rough way. he said to them, to each one of them, "After all, the new kingdom will gather all sincere and good-willed hearts who wish to live together as children of God. But what can you do in the situation in which you find yourselves? How many people may look at you, may look at me, and doubt that you are capable of being useful to the world?" Many people think that way. Because many people think like Levi at the time, that will be helpful if we're famous, if we're rich, if we're beautiful, if we have 10,000 titles, etc., etc. And many people disregard our usefulness. Hopefully, we don't do it to others. Levi approached Lysander, Aquila, and Paphos, the three men who approached him, in a very personal way, very roughly, speaking with conviction and saying out loud, "Lysander, what will you be able to accomplish since you're crippled?" How many people look at people who are physically disabled in some way and form, even immigrants? They hear the broken spoken language of immigrants and doubt their intellectual abilities. What a fallacy. And Aquila, were you not abandoned by your own family under the weight of serious charges? Many people look at you, at somebody who made a mistake, and think they will never be able to mount to anything. And Paphos, would you be able to build anything in light of your current afflictions? I remember once somebody telling us at the Spiritist Society of Baltimore, "Vanessa, can I give a break at the mediumistic practice? Because my life is so messy. I need to fix it all up. And then when I do it, I will come back." Another fallacy. Because when will our lives be so well in order to say that then we will be able to help? All myths in our lives. Everyone felt humiliated, crestfallen, says the author. Only then they finally recognized their grievous shortcomings. Levi's rude words awakened them. Levi played the role of the discourager. They felt an endless pain. And in Jesus, they always found love for all, especially to those who were grieving and anguished. Then, soon after they left, Jesus came along. Yes, Jesus entered Levi's house with Andrew, one of the disciples. They started talking, and then Levi told Jesus about the absurdity of these men who are unprivileged coming along and willing to partake in these efforts of spreading the good news. He spoke at length, telling how useless they were. And at some point, Jesus comes, staring kindly and zealously to Levi, patting him lightly on the shoulder. This is important. The emotional body language of Jesus. He's not going to criticize. He's being supportive. At the same time, he's educating us through Levi. We visualize he's looking at Levi with kindness, with zeal, and he's patting kindly, very lightly on Levi's shoulder, saying, "But Levi, We need to love and accept the precious collaboration from the unfortunates of the world. Since the gospel is the good news, how is it not to be God's message for them, the sad and forsaken in the immense human family? The victors of the earth do not need good news. Pause. What does he mean? Who are the victors of the earth? The ones that think they don't need God. They don't need religion. Yes, don't need spirituality. They don't need any of this nonsense, they say. They are the ones who, quote unquote, Jesus said, the victors. They think they are. To them, it's fruitless. They are not permeable. In science, when we want to study a certain tissue, like the tissue of the brain that I used to study, you need, in order to go through the tissue, you need to make it permeable to the molecules you're going to insert to stain certain parts, certain particles that will be detected, telling us a form of activity. To do this, we use soap, a form of soap that goes through the membrane, opens pores, and goes through. Only in that state, I'll be able to go through and study that tissue. People who are not permeable to these need to be left alone. We pray for them, but they are not the focus of the good news. The good news, as the name says, comes for those who need good news. Those who think that they already have the good news, they don't need this good news. The good news, says Jesus, in the mishaps of life, individuals hear the voice of God. Hopefully during this pandemic, that doesn't end yet, quite yet, and still rages, hopefully we'll hear the voice of God more loudly. Jesus continues by saying, seeking the oppressed, the afflicted, the slandered, we feel them so close to heaven in their hopes that we recognize. In the quiet courage that they reveal, a sublime reflection of the presence of our Father in their spirits. Have you observed any victor of the world with a higher concern than to defend the fruit of their material victory? Those, sometimes the young, the teen, the youthful ones, they don't care. You talk about God, I don't care. So it's impressive when we see Chico Xavier's works when he started at 17. The same for Divaldo Franco. The same for many, many spiritual people in the world who started quite young, but majority they're still dormant and still focused on the material aspects of life. Jesus has known it all along. He does not criticize them. He respects them. But he continues by teaching us through Levi. God rules the world. Who rules the world? Nobody. God does. And Master Jesus spoke with conviction. And love does not act with apprehension. Levi, let us imagine if the victors of the earth came to us lining up their outer weapons. He goes on and on telling us that we receive the good news to boost this intrinsic motivation. Why are you here, dear friend? Some family members may come to you and say, come on, it's December 31st, for God's sakes. Can we at least today not turn on any spiritist talk and do something else? What do you say? What else is there to do? What if this is the last day of our lives? Isn't this the best choice? But what about the family? Bring the family in. That's your way to love the family. 1 hour away is not going to deter us from loving them and let them love us. Like in the case of the book Workers of the Life Eternal, Demas, the discarnation of a Spiritist man. And we come to know that he was a good husband and a good father, a wonderful, charitable man, a humanitarian. But he forgot to accommodate his family in the teachings. So at his discarnation, he is suffering the very impediments of the family. The good spirits, out of his merit, have to jiggle here and there to make sure that the vibrations of the family that ignores the process of discarnation does not interfere that much. Reminding us, we're not going to preach to anyone, but we're going to do what Jesus has always done: invite. Invite people to come along, to join us in a prayer. We gather together for Christmas, New Year's Eve, and the question is, do you pray with your friends and family? And people tell me, but Vanessa, people think differently. They're going to think I'm weird. Well, you can excuse yourself and invite them kindly, joyfully, saying, may we just say a short prayer together in gratitude to life? And these are the good news. The good news that Jesus is always encouraging us to be that person, courageous, kind, believing in the good of everyone. Sometimes we're more Levi than anything else. We look at people who are disabled in their spirituality, in their religiosity, and instead of reaching out to them, being courageous and joyful, hopeful in our very belief, we retreat, postponing precious moments that soon need to become a standard on earth. Jesus goes on and on, talking to Levi the importance of loving the divine nature of all of us. He says, the blessings of God, Levi, bring infinite goodness to the hearts of those who are afflicted. The bed of pain, he says, they have already broken the strongest links that chain them to illusions, and they march towards the infinite love and wisdom, the bed of pain, the exclusion from all the modern facilities, the incredulousness of their most beloved, the sores and scars of the spirit are lights that God ignites in the dark of humanity. Levi, we must love intensely the unfortunate individuals of the world. He goes on and on. But for us, it's enough to identify the very method that Harvard recently has identified. That intrinsic motivation in us. the motivation to do the good, to seek the good, to be encouragers like Jesus is in our lives. He looks at Saul of Tarsus, who was the greatest persecutor of Christians in this world. And yet, he does not give up on him. At the moment in which Saul of Tarsus, as described in the book Paul and Stephen, by the Spirit author Emmanuel through Chico Xavier, on the road to Damascus, chapter 10, part 1, we're going to see Jesus, the motivator of love, in a dialogue that is established between the mind of Saul of Tarsus, the Pharisee, the doctor of the law, and Jesus. He shows up mercifully and asks, "Why do you persecute me?" Why? He falls. He feels blinded because he has been, for the longest time, away and astray from the truth. He will regain his vision, but first he needs to see it with his heart. Just like Jesus tells Nicodemus, and it's described in the book Good News. Nicodemus, another doctor of the law, who has faithfully studied the laws, the scriptures, all his life. He recognizes in Jesus the Master, the Messiah. But he asks, what am I missing? Because for the longest time I tried to find this kingdom of God and I don't find it anywhere. And Jesus replies, but Nicodemus, you forgot that knowing is not enough. You need to feel the scriptures. Again, he does not demand, he does not criticize, but he encourages us through Nicodemus to feel. He encouraged Saul of Tarsus to regain vision from within. He encourages us to feel what we have been studying throughout all these books that Spiritism brings to us. To feel the scripture. Feel it so much that in the midst of adversities, we're going to see, as he says to Levi, right before he preaches the Sermon of the Mount, and we will repeat, those who are in pain are already broken. They broke the strongest links that chain them to illusions. Thus, we must love them intensely. He is inviting us to solidarity with one another, never despising the efforts of anyone. So, main question for us, as we prepare ourselves for the new year, am I also an encourager? Or am I someone who, like Levi, is discouraging people from partaking in the feast of co-creation with God? Who are we? Who are we if there is one law of equality? No matter if we're in the body of a man or a woman, a child or an elderly person, of someone who is rich or poor, we're all invited to partake in the co-creation efforts in this universe of God. Jesus knows of it, and he does not put anybody down. In 2022, that's a good resolution for all of us, to be inspired by the greatest motivator of love, Jesus, and be an encourager as well. seeking the good in everything and in everyone, to the point that one day, and you can read this as well in the book, and this is in the latest issue of the Spiritist magazine, when we talk about Joanna of Cusa, who is the reincarnation, not the reincarnation, but the presence of Joana de Angelis Tordevaldo Franco. In the very chapter 15, we have this wonderful educator and therapist, now as a therapist. He comes to Joana, who says to him, confessing to the master her fears, her struggles, her dislikes at home, exposing her bitterness in regards to religious differences between her and her husband. What does Jesus say? What does he do? He says, Joanna, there is only one God, and that is our Father. There is only one faith in our relationship with his love. He talks about the different religions, and he says, I come in the name of God to open the temple, living faith in the hearts of human beings. How many times we experience these differences at home? Relatives, family members, and friends who misunderstand our religious devotion. What to do? Nothing. Just keep on being. Because at the end of the day, the temple is in our hearts. It's not in a spiritist center. Though, there in that school, in that temple, we're helped to light it up inside of us. She is counseled by him by saying something that is probably one of the most difficult recommendations of all times, but he's always encouraging towards love. He says, Joanna, be faithful to God by loving your spouse in the world as if he were your son. Do not waste time discussing what is unreasonable. God does not fight battles with his children, but he works in silence, reaching all of his creation. Go, Joanna. Strive in silence, and when called for clarification, speak the sweet or the energetic word of salvation according to circumstances. Go back home. Love your spouse as the divine material that heaven has put in your hands so that you may whittle a piece of life, wisdom, and love. He's always encouraging us. He's never bringing us apart. Jesus knew that Joanna's husband was tough and rough, difficult. And he gives an advice that probably we need to hear it time and again. Time and again. Because for little, we're quitting the most beautiful promises of our own evolution, our family, our relationships within our homes. And he is encouraging us to love. He says it. Love your partner as the divine material that heaven has put in your hands. People may be here and saying, but Vanessa, is he saying we can't divorce? You can. No, he's not prohibiting anything. He's just inviting us. Even if you divorce, but if you keep holding grudges, it's failure. But if sometimes it's inevitable, things happen. But deep inside, I need to cleanse my heart and love that person, even though we're not physically under the same roof. Sometimes estrangements happen between parents and children. And what to do? The same. To love. To love on the child's part, no matter what age, it's our turn to honor our parents. In the Gospel according to Spiritism, Kardec brings back that statement of the law of God and explains to us that to honor means to respect, to be grateful, to appreciate. Something that Bert Hellinger, the missionary who brought to us the teachings of the systemic family constellation, shows to us, we'll never be whole until the roots inside of us, the parents, the mother, the father, are healthy. Thus, we can receive nourishment from life and blossom in our potentialities, appreciating, being grateful to our parents, and at the same time, loving our children. I know parents who claim and proclaim, but my children, they are ungrateful. Well, the Gospel according to Spiritism has the thesis about it. It's in chapter 14, item 9, ingratitude of children, and explains to us where it all began. What is our role as parents? To love. To love and to love and to love and to practice unconditional love. To love doesn't mean to give the car that they have not merited. To love is not to give them the things, the phone, the tablet, the computer, the whatever it is that they want. It's to give of ourselves, of our understanding, of our appreciation, of our care, of our constant support. Speaking spirit to spirit, like Jesus used to do with us, always reminding us that between people and us, there's always God. As he says to Joanna, do not waste time discussing what's unreasonable. How often we spend time discussing because people put their things here and not there. They put their shoes here and not there. And he says, God does not fight battles with his children. He works in silence. Strive in silence, something that our Western society falls short. But we need to practice more often. Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist monk who won the Nobel Prize of Peace, wrote a book about silence, bringing to us the power of silence. As Jacques Lacan, the psychoanalytic doctor, brought to us in the analysis of speech the power of silence. The day we learn the power of silence, but not the external silence only, the inner silence, that stillness within, when we are in harmony with God, and the world can proclaim a revolution, but deep inside I am in harmony. That's a resolution to be achieved in 2022. And Jesus encourages us to practice it. Through Joanna, he's teaching us the power of silence in love. Silence in love. But what if, dear friends? What if we make all the efforts of the world, and yet those whom we love are not here with us? Or those who understand us are not here, and all we find around are people poking us, people pushing us to the limits. What has Jesus has to say about it? What does he have to say? Let's go to chapter 8. Chapter 8 is the ultimate chapter. It's about a heart. It's the memorable encounter and dialogue between Bartholomew and Jesus. And for that one, we can wrap up how we feel Jesus as an encourager, never criticizing, because, by the way, positive criticism does not exist. When it's positive, it's an advice, a recommendation. Criticism is criticism. Jesus never criticized. He was always recommending, encouraging, motivating, always this intrinsic motivation. A motivation that was always based on this approach motivation, boosting us to the good, to seek the good, always, but not this ephemeral good, this good that is everlasting. And he says to our dear Bartholomew, who was always feeling sad, downcast, in painful reflections, like many people, not because he was simply sad, but he was depressed. And you know, and I know that depression is not sadness. It's actually the byproduct of this anger within. And Bartholomew didn't know what to do with it. So at some point, Jesus had some time, and he took the opportunity of a few moments to speak with Bartholomew. And after Jesus asking, Bartholomew opened his heart. And he said, I will never be able to explain to you the reasons for my bitter sadness. All I can say is that your gospel fills me up with hope for a kingdom of light that awaits our hearts beyond on high. He goes on, but he talks about the seal of evil seems to obscure the purest things. Isn't that true? You may post a beautiful thing on your social media, and then you're going to see people. Like I heard the talk by Brené Brown, when she was talking about the comments, the brutal comments of people in her life. She's trying to do something good, and people are being discouragers. What to do? Here comes the greatest motivator of all times. He says, Bartholomew, our philosophy is of the gospel or the good news. Have you ever seen any good news not produce joy? So he's talking about our incoherence, because we are waiting for other people to understand us so we can feel the joy. You're doing well by keeping your hope in the face of these new teachings. You see, he's always encouraging. And I want to inspire my disciple spirits to take heart. And if I have had the occasion to teach that my kingdom is not of this world, this does not mean that I do not intend on extending it to the hearts of those living on the earth. Do you think that I would have come to this world without such comforting certainty? He's telling us, come on, friends. Do you think I'm here if there is no hope? That's the reason why he came here. The gospel will have to flourish, first of all, in the soul of each created being, before it can give fruit in the spirit of the crowds. Many spiritists I see, they come and say, Vanessa, I have a great idea. How about if we do this, and then the whole world is going to know of Spiritism? Friends. These teachings are not like that for the masses. It's an individual approach, and Jesus' words are here. They flourish from within, and they spread out. It's not the reverse. You can ask the richest people in the world and create the most powerful spiritist network you can ever imagine. And yet, as Kardec said in his codification, if it comes at the wrong time, the little plant will be smashed. You and I must have no plans, because this is not our plan. It's God's plan. Soldiers do not create strategies. Soldiers follow through. The general in this planet is Master Jesus. As Jorge Godinho Neri, the president of the Brazilian Spiritist Federation, said often to us, we're soldiers. We don't need to worry about strategies. It's not on us. To make people, forcing them from the outside in, not the good news. Only those who can see will see it. For example, I have a dog, Lupi. She's cute, just 1 year old. She's often here with me at Kardec Radio every morning when we do our morning prayer at Kardec Radio at 9 a.m. US time, Eastern time. She's here. She listens. She wags the tail. She wants some love and pattings. But does she understand anything? No. Many of us are just like Lupi. We hear, we listen to it, but we don't really understand. But one day, she will. Because connected to a physical body of a dog, there is an intelligent principle, the spiritual principle that evolves and through millennia will take one day the form of a human body. Millennia away from here, millions of years, who knows? André Luiz in the book Evolution into Worlds, through Chico Xavier and Valdo Vieira, two mediums, explains it all to us. Meanwhile, those who can see and who can hear will be benefited. Many people will pass by and won't get it. It's a matter of perception. But Jesus says, the gospel will have to flourish from within. I come from my Father filled with strength and trust, and my message will produce great joy for those that will receive it within their hearts. Life on earth is a wonderful road that leads us to the loving arms of God. Work is our march. Common struggle is the daily walk. The delightful and short passing of daybreak and nightly hours of serenity are times of rest. But listen closely to me. In activity or in rest, the opportunity of an hour, of a kind action, a humble word, is the invitation of our Father for us to sow His sacred blessings. In general, human beings abuse such precious gifts by placing their imperfect needs before God's purpose, disturbing their own advancement. And that results in the most arduous journeys necessary in order to rectify faults committed and often fruitless efforts. Due to these reasons, we observe that earthly travelers are always low-spirited. In the obsessive need to fulfill their own desires, they injure themselves on the rocky roads, hearing not the truth about spiritual reality, closing their eyes with the shadow of rebelliousness and shedding tears with desperate shouts and bitter moans, without seeing the true crystal fountain, the cherubim star in heaven, the flower scent, the words of a friend, and the clarity of experiences that God has spread for the journey in all the aspects of their paths. To wrap up, friends, Bartholomew goes on in this beautiful and deep dialogue with Jesus as we prepare ourselves to close another cycle in this reincarnation and begin a new one in 2022. We're being encouraged by Jesus to seek the good, to feel the good, to visualize the good and to mold the good with all the resources that we have at hand. These are Emmanuel's words in the book Thought and Life, chapter 10. That's the direction, away from painful trials that we've created for ourselves, rejoicing even in the midst of our tears, knowing that everything shall pass. As Mother Mary constantly reminds us, everything shall pass. Another year passes, and we have at hand the most important gift, the gift of time, and the opportunity to renew each and every day our hearts in joy and hope, today and always. Thank you, friends.
Thank you very much, Vanessa, for this beautiful nourishment of the soul that you guided us through. Thank you. And we would kindly invite you to do, in order for us to conclude this meeting today, to do our prayer. Would it be possible?
Sure.
Please.
Let us feel the encouragement of love, of the good, of harmony that comes from Master Jesus, our governor, loving Master. We can feel your soothing vibrations enveloping us in understanding and health. What a blessing to be here in this intercontinental meeting, building bridges of friendship in love, giving each other a hand, visualizing with you a shower of healing light, calming the flames of hatred and ignorance inside of all of our hearts. And we see this light going within our planet in its multidimensional layers, reaching the darkest places, enveloping those who are dormant to your call of love. Brothers and sisters of ours who need an opportunity to awaken, to have their change of heart, we visualize your messengers rescuing them to a new beginning. And for those in the valley of suicides, we pray for them, for their renewal, for we are all children of God, never forsaken, always awaited in the journey of love and life. May the blessings of your love be bestowed upon all of us. And especially, we thank Spiritism for bringing us this light of discernment, the boost to our reasoning, transforming our faith in unshakable manners. As our hearts express our deepest gratitude for the spirit mentors and the incarnate directors of the Spiritist Psychological Society in London, for their works and for inviting us to this study together. May we continue to feel these vibrations of your loving encouragement each and every day in the year that is about to begin. And so be it.
Our gratitude, Vanessa, for being with us in this special day, and also gratitude for all of those who have been with us throughout these 2 weeks where we have been, as learners, reflecting about the good news that Jesus brought to all of us. Our gratitude from the bottom of our hearts to all, and hope that we have other opportunities to carry on together once more. And for those who want to carry on tonight, also to be with us, for the final talk in Portuguese, please feel free to be here at 8 p.m. London time, where we will have the pleasure to have with us our friend from Brazil, Tato Savi, who will be presenting the team in Portuguese, Jesus, o Motivador do Amor. And in that way, we are coming to the end of this program today. And from tomorrow onwards, we will be carrying on our normal activities. So, Vanessa, once more, thank you and much peace to you, to your family, and all of those around you. And hope to see you in 2022.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you
Much
so
peace
much.
to all. Take care. See you.